We're talking hoops, and you know our guys will ramble.
Can you just email me the rest of this story?
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
Dickinson's an underrated talent, 100%.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8, streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
All right, welcome in. Happy Saturday to you. It is Just Dubs for the next hour. It's John Dickinson along with Kyle Harr. We hope we can see Raf Corral in the Daly City studios at some point here coming up between now and noon. But we are here for the next hour. We are talking Warriors basketball. Golden State, another one of these opportunities for the Warriors missing some time, having some time off in between games. And so, yeah, you look at it and the Warriors finding themselves hitting the road, going to Toronto and then Brooklyn and then Charlotte, winning 3 consecutive games. Kyle, much different feel and vibe, at least in the win-loss department, than when we last spoke and the Warriors had not won a game in basically 2 weeks because of everything going on with the NBA Cup and the lengthy breaks between games. But 3 in a row for the Dubs. They get the job done at home. They weren't void of drama with Draymond Green and Steve Kerr having a little back and forth in the middle game of the 3 at home. But 3 wins is 3 wins, and they're back over 500. What's going on, my man? Happy holidays. Good to be with you.
Yeah, happy holidays. Good to be with you, too. Yeah, amidst all the drama and before they went on this 3-game win streak, the 3 losses in a row, and let me tell you, in this show, and I'm sure Warriors fans felt it like they always do. It felt like the world was collapsing, JD.
It really did, and it always does. And look, they're 1 loss away from it probably starting to feel that way again, even if it's a game that's going to be played tomorrow in the afternoon when everybody, including the 2 of us, are going to be a lot more focused on what's going on with the 49ers and the Bears down at Levi's in one of the bigger games on the NFL slate. But just to kind of lay out the week here again to close out 2025 with you here for the next hour. And you can jump in and join the conversation at 808-KNBR, 415-808-5627. Golden State Lumber and Showroom text line, that very same number. We appreciate those of you starting to file in on YouTube and Twitch, best YouTube chat in sports, the Dubs OT, Just Dubs YouTube chat. And so we're here today. We're not going to have a Dubs OT show tomorrow because of the afternoon game and then the 49ers and the Bears, but we're going to cram 2 Dubs OT shows into Monday night immediately following the Warriors and the Brooklyn Nets from Brooklyn. So with the quick back-to-back, we'll hop on right around 7 o'clock, and we'll go as long as we need to on Monday. And then we're going to be on the YouTube stream only for the finale of 2025 as the Warriors are going to take on Charlotte to close out the trip in a 10 a.m. affair. And so we'll be on right around 12:30 as we'll help ring in the new year with a little Dubs OT early edition at about, I think that's going to be the earliest Dubs OT we've ever had, Kyle, at about 12:15 or 12:30 in the afternoon. Right day for it, though.
I was about to say, what a way to close out 2025 with a 10 a.m. game against the Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, we'll ring in the new year from Australia, right, or wherever they are, New Zealand, wherever they are, and wherever they're 12 hours ahead. It'll be 2026 at that point all across the world. But no, we start with the wins and the Warriors trying to find, some semblance of a consistent rotation. Interestingly enough, though, part of Steve Kerr doing that led to a little bit less Draymond Green. One, because he was thrown out of the game a week ago tonight against the Suns, and then he ends up with the spat in the game back on Monday night against Orlando, and ends up taking himself out of the bench area and going to the locker room to cool off. He did come back and then was not going to be put back into the game because others were playing well. And so it was 2 games, and it's been kind of a theme throughout December. Basically, it's this team has played better basketball. Draymond's really struggled in December, and this team, when you look at the numbers and the plus minus, and they've played better, and at times in which Draymond has not been on the floor. So then you fast forward to how will Draymond Green handle it? How will Steve Kerr handle it? I thought, Steve kind of took the grenade, as we talked about on Dubs OT, with just the apology for maybe going at Draymond in a manner that he felt was a little bit over the top. And it's interesting because I think, Marcus Thompson of The Athletic had said on their podcast, the Plus Minus podcast, the one he does with Tim Kawakami and others at times, that his intel kind of on what happened was that Steve went at Draymond pretty hard and in a way that was gonna make Draymond want to react maybe in the way that he did, and in a way that we've seen Draymond potentially fly off the handle worse than just walking away and leaving the bench. So it is crazy to kind of say, as you look at that particular scenario, somebody leaving the bench and leaving their team is a positive outcome. But I think with Draymond and the history, like, we've seen Draymond get turned angry the other way, and we've seen the things that it can lead to. We even know, going back to 2016, what it can lead to between Draymond and Steve Kerr with the incident from the locker room in Oklahoma City the night of the double bang game, which hard to believe as we enter 2026, Kyle, that was almost 10 years ago here, coming up at the end of February. That will be the 10-year anniversary of maybe the most iconic Stephen Curry shot and Warrior comeback in their dynastic era. But it was, to the point where, the police standing outside the locker room in Oklahoma City felt they may have to go in and get involved in, like, breaking up what was going on because it was so intense, shall we say. So we know what it can be when those two specifically. And look, the one I think discussed thing about Steve is a hothead. Steve has a temper. Like, the Steve Kerr this is a guy who, pissed off MJ to the point where, MJ took a shot at it. Like, it just and he didn't back down from it, right? Going back to his playing days. So it really is a situation where Steve isn't going to back down. And I think gets a lot more angry at some of the frustrating aspects of the way this team can play from time to time than I think people realize, given a lot of what you hear, Kyle, in press conferences of, yeah, well, it's on me, and, turnovers are going to happen, and I got to figure out the rotation, and it's early, and I'm going to play 11 or 12 because I've got 13 or 14 that are worthy of play. Like, that light, everything's cool, everything's chill kind of mentality is not always what it is behind closed doors. So I found it interesting that Steve came out and really apologized for his end of it, and said, hey, I want Draymond to be here as long as I'm here and forever, and to try to win another title. I thought the other interesting part to Kerr's comments, and look, everybody knows this, was the discussion about the fading dynasty. And I know a lot of people would say, well, JD, fading dynasty, I mean, the dynasty's basically over. We don't know that, because they could make a move or two that get them in a position to where, maybe not this year. I think it'd be a pretty tall ask this year, but they could make a move at the deadline this year that maybe gives them one more go of it even next year. I know people are like, damn, like, what are you talking about, JD? Like, how could that even be the case? You'd be 5 years removed at that point from the last championship. But so we don't totally know exactly but I think most would say the end is already happened until the Warriors prove otherwise. Like, if they did not win another title or get to another conference finals, let's say, Kyle, you would go back, let's say 5 years from now, and say, oh, well, this thing ended in 22 or ended in 23 when they beat the Kings and then the Lakers knocked them out and they never really got beyond the second round again. Obviously last year they were able to beat Houston and get to the second round. So history dictates in hindsight, I think, when dynasties end. Some end because we all know they end, right? Michael Jordan, again, going in the way back, like the Bulls won their 6 and 8, and then Jordan wasn't playing anymore, and Scottie Pippen was on Portland or Houston, and then Portland, and then Phil Jackson was coaching the Lakers. It's like, all right, well, there, like everybody's, it's gone there. This is a little different because you still have Steph and you still have Draymond for now, and you still have Steve Kerr for now, even though he's in the last year of his deal.
I mean, I also think like another indication of being a fading dynasty is when you see another team on the come up, and this I'm kind of talking about the Thunder here, already winning a title, much kind of like the young Warriors back in the days when the Spurs were kind of running the NBA, and here's this young team that is taking the league by storm. So it's kind of like, man, well, like in the Warriors case now this year, it's more so, do we have enough to beat a team like the Thunder that are emerging into potentially winning multiple championships with the core that they have?
No doubt. Although don't tell the Spurs that, because the Spurs look like they're ready to take the Thunder out and maybe everybody else out, except the Warriors. It's funny. I was looking at San Antonio all the way up to second now in the Western Conference standings, and they've got the 2 losses to the Dubs going back to the middle of November, and those great games that were played in San Antonio, and one of them being an NBA Cup game. But all of that is to say, and look, the Warriors, I mean, for championship, forget about championship. Can this team just get into the playoffs and be top 6 or be top 4? There are some significant questions as to whether they have the ability to even do that for a second consecutive season. And even last year, as well as they played in the 23-8 finish, they still had to, as the 7 seed, win a play-in tournament game and get to 7 and then take out a team like Houston. And ultimately it proved to be too much physically for an aging team on the one hand, and then an inexperienced team in terms of the playoff experience on the other hand, with the Pajemskis and the Moody's and the Quentin Posts, not being able to, in really their first playoffs of significant meaning. I know Moody did play a couple years ago, and Pajemski, it was his first opportunity, and Quentin Post was their first opportunity. Moody got some run in the 23 playoffs against Sacramento and against the Lakers, and some bit parts in 22, as did Kuminga, but just not enough on either end. Not enough from the OGs, not enough from the young guys. And so the question surrounding the Warriors, to kind of bring it back to, hey, all right, this team's won 3 in a row, but what is ultimately that ceiling, as much as it feels better than it did that they've won 3 in a row? And I think that's the thing that they have to continue to try to grapple with, because I don't know about you, and we'll relate that to the trade deadline, because there was a topic we got into on Dubs OT on Christmas night that was kind of reintroduced last night in the post game of the Amazon Prime video game with Portland playing the Clippers last night. And in the post game, Chris Haynes had a couple of nuggets, which most of it was kind of known, but we're going to get to what he had to say here coming up after we take our first time out, and then kind of re-dive into what it would look like if the Warriors are going to try to make what I would say is a semi-big to big move and a legitimate gamble as well. So we've got that coming up. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. The other question I want to throw just at everybody in the chat and to those listening on the radio as well that maybe want to call and jump in and join the conversation. Like, Warriors have won 3 in a row. Well, you know what? They won 3 in a row about a month and a half ago, and it looked like maybe they were turning a corner, and then they weren't. And then it was kind of another 2 to 3 weeks of a malaise, and then they get to this point where they were at a breaking point again, and Steph's out, and Draymond's out and Jimmy's maybe going to come back, and then they win the Pat Spencer games in Cleveland and Chicago to kind of save themselves, and then they go into the extended off time because of the NBA Cup, and then they can't win a freaking game, and then you come back and it just so they've been on the teeter-totter, they've been on the roller coaster of they come out, they're 4-1, and then they're blah for like 3-4 weeks, and then they get to a breaking point where it's Draymond and Jimmy are calling everybody out. And it's like, oh, we got to win we got to win a couple games to stable. And then they win a couple games to stabilize it. And then it's blah for 3 weeks. And then it's like, oh, you got to win a couple games to stabilize it. And then they do. And then it's 2 weeks where they don't win a game because of the schedule. And now they get to the point where Draymond's getting kicked out of games. Draymond and Steve are going at it, have to both apologize to the team. And they're under 500. And so they gotta run off 3 in a row. Like I'm kind of sick of running off 3 in a row. And we talked about it at the end of the Phoenix game that they got beat in Phoenix, the latest in just a string of horrible losses in clutch games a week ago Thursday. And I kind of put them on note, like you got to go 5-1 here between now and the end of the year. Well, they're halfway in terms of the 6 games played to that, and they're 3-0 in that stretch. So the question, though, is, and I'll ask you, Kyle, like, when do you believe it's meaningful? Like, when do you believe that it's, this team's like actually turning the corner and getting on a little bit of a run to where you feel like, at least for, the now to the trade deadline portion of the season, they can just play at this level and then look up on February 5th and all of a sudden they're 8 to 10 games over 500 as opposed to anywhere between 2 under and say 2 to 3 over?
Yeah, I would say two main things for me. One is consistency, because we know what Steph, Jimmy, and Dre are going to give you night in and night out. But it's consistency from your Moody's, your Pajemskis, your Posts, the guys that are going to get 20 minutes a night, and what kind of minutes are they going to give you? And then I think the second key point, and I think this point is kind of why they've been playing well. I mean, even going back to that first game of the doubleheader against the Phoenix Suns, why this thing has started to feel like it's starting to turn the corner is Jimmy Butler's play. And I think that's been a key to these last 3 games. And if they can continue to get Jimmy Butler involved and have the ball in his hands when Steph isn't on the court, and not forcing to have other guys who aren't as consistent as being that playmaker, then I think that's a key for success there.
I think it's a great point. I think the more aggressive Jimmy Butler is probably the most tangibly tangible thing you could expect to continue if the onus is put on Jimmy Butler that he has to continue to be playing at that level. They've changed the rotation a little bit too, with respect to they have the goal. They don't want to play Draymond at the 5, or at least start him there. So Quentin Post is in. We've seen Pajemski play more and play better. I think that, Pajemski and Moody have played better the last 3 games, which I think has also been an indicator. When those two play well, the Warriors tend to win games. And even the Christmas night game, Steph doesn't shoot it well. Draymond wasn't great. Jimmy was pretty solid, but they got enough from others to be able to still win a game like that against a pretty crappy Mavs team. That's a level that they hadn't really been able to hit. But for me, it's more, you got to win 2 of the next 3. And to me, the Brooklyn game and the Charlotte game, like those are the 2. Like you got to, Toronto, I think got beat by Washington last night, kind of got blown out in Washington, but Toronto's been a better team at home. I think they're 18-14, something like that. That's a kind of team. You might lose that game to begin a road trip, but if you win it, you better win the other 2. Like you better win the other 2 regardless. I know I said that the other night on Dubs OT. And so like 5-1, 6-0, and then you get this stretch of 11-12 at home, and you get a bunch of. You go to play the Clippers as your one road game. Maybe it's 10 of 11. At home, and then they've got another one at the end of the month at home. But anyway, you're getting a lot of home games against a lot of teams. So to me, it's get to a point And there are 10 games now between now and January 15th when that trade window opens for Kuminga. They'll actually be right at the midpoint of the season, 41 games in, on January 15. Can you go 7-3? I think in the next 10 games. And, you've got OKC mixed in there, but you got Utah, you got Milwaukee. I think you play the Kings again at home in that stretch, the Brooklyn, Charlotte games on the road. Like, can you get to that point where you're one over and you go 7-3, and then all of a sudden you're 23-18 at the halfway mark of the season. And I think if you're there, knowing you're going to make a move, and then, knowing that you're, believing that you're going to play at a more consistently high level in the second half of the year, maybe that's the way to get back into that. Can you win 23 in the first half, can you win 25-26 in the second half, and then all of a sudden you're kind of right back to where you were, and maybe you have action for a 6 seed at that particular point in time. All right, let's take a timeout. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. We say all that we have, and we will get to some Kyle's clicks to bring it back to what Chris Haynes had reported on for Amazon Prime video and in the post game after the Clippers-Blazers game last night, because there is a big name that the Warriors are reportedly interested in. We'll tell you who it is next, and we'll play the audio from Chris Haynes talking about it coming up right here. Just Dubs on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. Live from downtown.
Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson on the sports leader. Streaming live at knbr.com and on the KNBR app.
All right, rolling along here on a Saturday, Just Dubs. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627, talking all things Warriors here on this Saturday, and we'll get to some Kyle's clicks between now and noon. But, Kyle, we got to get to it. We talked about it a little bit because the Mavs were in town taking on the Warriors for the Christmas game, and this was a deal that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of, just given where this particular player is at right now physically, and it's always a question physically with this player. But we talked about it a little bit on Dubs OT. So those that are tuning in on YouTube today, that maybe were in the stream on Thursday night, on Christmas night, this is going to be a little bit redundant for you, but it's actually something that has been reported now again with the Warriors having more interest. So let's go ahead and hear Chris Haynes from last night on Prime Video, the post game after the Clippers took on the Portland Trailblazers last night. And here's what he had to say about the Warriors and what they're looking at right now.
Yeah, today I found something very interesting. I came on last week and I told you about what the Warriors are looking for a big man, rim running big man, protect the paint, lob threat. I was told they're contemplating making a case to acquire Anthony Davis as well. And so with that being said, I was told that Dallas was not that fascinated with what Golden State has on its books. And so if the Golden State Warriors did really want to make a true play at Anthony Davis, they would likely have to acquire some more assets or involve another team. So again, with that being said, the Warriors are really trying to figure out ways to assure themselves that they have a real defensive dominant starting center going into the second half of the season to help Stephen Curry and Draymond Green out.
All right, so there you go. Anthony Davis, the Warriors' interest, and I thought the other part of that too. Nick Claxton was a name that Chris Haynes had brought up in a prior report about a week ago, and there was one other name, and forgive me, Kyle, if you remember who it was. There was one other center.
Yeah, Gafford and Robert Williams were the other two.
Robert Williams was the one. Yes, Daniel Gafford was one, and then Robert Williams even was the third one that he brought up. But he brought up the fact that the Warriors are trying to add big man size as opposed to, at this point, wing size, and they're trying to figure out, all right, how do they use the Jonathan Kuminga salary slot with other stuff and potentially picks to really look to augment the roster. The other part to it was, hey, the Mavs don't really love what the Warriors have to offer as well. And look, there's two ways the Warriors could go about doing it if they wanted to do it. Anthony Davis makes $54.1 million this year, which is the exact same amount as Jimmy Butler. And so Jimmy Butler would have to be in the trade for Anthony Davis, or if you're the Warriors, you'd have to include Draymond Green and Jonathan Kuminga, which Kuminga would definitely be a part of this deal going somewhere, Draymond going somewhere. But I think you could look at Dallas, and Dallas is saying, yeah, well, we don't really want Draymond. We're kind of rebuilding. So he would have to go elsewhere. And maybe they don't even really want Kuminga at this point, because depending upon, different teams throughout the league have different opinions on Kuminga. I mean, do you want to put Kuminga next to Cooper Flagg and say, hey, this is the 1-2 punch with Kyrie, at some point? No, I don't think that's necessarily. So it is a tricky basketball fit. But the Warriors' reported interest, I do find somewhat fascinating, because it ties back to the last week and the Warriors playing a little bit better in some instances without Draymond, the Draymond Kerr spat, where Kerr comes back out after and says, hey, I want to play with this guy, for as long as I'm here. But at the same time, I think that part of Draymond's frustration, Kyle, is the fact that maybe he's being that he feels the Warriors are exploring trades that maybe would send him elsewhere. And I think he's maybe feeling the pressure from that a little bit, and it was leading toward some more volatility as he was not playing as well throughout the course of December. So do you want, on the surface, like, do you want Anthony Davis? Like, I would say, yeah, a healthy and in shape Anthony Davis, awesome, but he's not healthy. He's not in shape. He makes $54.1 million. And I just, to me, you get Anthony Davis. It's like we were talking about earlier. It's a move for next year as much or more as it would be a move for this year, given, he'd have to get with Rick Celebrity and really get his body right. And the guy is just a walking injury on a nightly basis. Like, he goes down once every night, and sometimes he doesn't come back, as was the case on Christmas.
Yeah, and I want to go back to you used the word gamble in the first segment, and this is a total gamble beat because, yeah, like, on the surface, yeah, I kind of like the idea of Anthony Davis. He checks a lot of boxes. He's a rim protecting big that can stretch the floor, rebound at a high level, and can take away pressure from Jimmy and Steph. And a big three of Steph, Jimmy, and AD sounds really good on the surface. But then you look at, well, what kind of player are you getting right now? And right now, you're getting a out of shape Anthony Davis that literally you just saw. He just gave you an audition not too long ago. And what does he do? Oh yeah, he plays 10 minutes, goes like 1 for 4 with 5 points, and then, like, while he's in the fast break, he just goes straight to the bench and doesn't play the rest of the game.
I will say this, and Anthony Davis played one game in November. He played one game in November. He has been playing in December, and he's averaging 21 and 12 with 3 assists and basically a block and a half a game. He's 20 and 11 for the year, 52% field goal percentage. But again, it's the availability issue for Davis, and it's also the fact that he's making the 54.1 this year. He's making 58.4 next year. He's got a player option, so he can either he's probably going to want an extension. Even at 32 years old, he's going to want an extension. I think at the point in which, and he's going to be 33 coming up in March, at the point in which you trade for him. Otherwise, he has the ability to opt out after next season. So in the summer of 2027 to try and stretch and get more money for longer time, which I don't think the Warriors would certainly be interested in. But it's fascinating because I think you can say, hey, Steph, Jimmy, Davis, that gives you a guard who's dominant, that gives you a wing player that is older but has the ability to still impact games in a major way, and then it gives you a big man that can do it offensively and defensively. The key, though, is you got to have him available, and I just and in shape, which is something that again I just don't like. Can you trust that? And then the other part of it is once you make that move, even if it's Kuminga going out and Draymond going out, you got to add to the rest of the roster, and there's probably going to have to be other players in the trade because it's going to have to be, if Chris Haynes' reporting is on point, it's going to have to be, sweetened in ways to make it where Dallas wants to do business with you, and that means sending other assets and or picks to other places to get them to take a Draymond or to get them to be the team that's going to take a Kuminga because the Mavs would rather have a young player that's on another team's roster. And so then that team would have to want Kuminga and maybe a pick in order to make it work. So it does tend to get a little convoluted, but I had to almost check myself a little bit because I was pretty adamantly against it on Christmas night when we talked about it. But man, I just, if he is healthy, and he still is younger than the rest of this core at this point, although he's got a lot of miles on him, he is a 20 and 11 big man. Now, the other part to Anthony Davis, and we'll get to the call here before we take a quick timeout, the other part of Anthony Davis is Anthony Davis. There's been a lot of discussion about Draymond not wanting to play the 5 and wanting to play the 4. Anthony Davis constantly says he wants to play the 4. No, AD. You come to the Warriors, you're not playing with Quentin Post up front. You come to the Warriors, you're playing the freaking 5, man. Like, and everything else is going to kind of fill in around that. So that, that's something that I think you'd have to also be able to convince him, because he doesn't like playing the 5 like Draymond doesn't like playing the 5. So I think that's going to be, there are some little things on the surface that make you, I just don't, I don't know if it's the fit that you're going to want. Let's get Bruce and Modesto in here real quick before we take a timeout on the Anthony Davis front here on the Sports Leader. What's going on, Bruce? You want Anthony Davis?
Good morning. Happy holidays. You guys talk yourselves out of the guy. Absolutely not. He can't stay healthy to take care of his grandmother. So you get off Anthony Davis. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not going to pretend I do. And then the other thing is, get off of Horford. I know he's, not everything we'd hoped he'd be, but I went to the game on Christmas Day. If the guy can come in for 5 minutes and go 4 for 4, you let him do his thing. He tries hard. He gets after it. I think anything you do right now, you do for the rest of this year. You're not looking the next year yet. So yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think you're looking at this year and next year as a combo. It's this year and next year are kind of together on that front, and then the future beyond that. I'm with you. I don't think you care about that. Look, Horford, you saw one of Horford's best games as a Warrior on Christmas after not playing for the last 3 weeks. He comes out, he hit. I mean, that's what Al Horford was brought here to do, and so thank you for the call, Bruce. But Horford has been overall, let's just be honest, a disappointment. But yeah, I think and his name hadn't been mentioned to this point on the show, but I think it has to be a scenario where, he's got to hit shots to be a part of it. I think with Davis, I don't know. I didn't want him. And then I'm kind of talking myself into it. And then as we're going through it, I'm kind of talking myself out of it again. But I don't know. It is intriguing, but it just, like, if this was 2 years ago, I would have said, sure. Like, I think Anthony Davis is worth it. The other thing, there is a Draymond part of it. There is a Draymond part of it too, because I think you have to weigh, and this is where we can get into it coming back, and we'll do some Kyle's clicks to close out the show. The other part of it is that, what level of Draymond are you going to get between now and the end of the season? And is playoff Draymond, because playoff Draymond is a completely different animal than regular season Draymond and what we've seen here throughout December. Do you want to give up on the prospect of playoff Draymond because you feel so desperate about your inability to get to the, playoffs in the regular season where you need to be to make a run? But once you get there, would you rather have playoff Draymond on the roster than not have playoff Draymond on the roster? And how does that relate to Anthony Davis? Because I think Anthony Davis, in a vacuum, as a regular season player, forget about the ramifications. I mean, he does bring an element that potentially would help the Warriors on the interior as a scorer and as a lob threat and as somebody that can anchor a defense on the inside. But again, he's got to want to play the 5. And that's been something that he doesn't, hasn't necessarily wanted to do with the Lakers or now with Dallas. All right, let's take a timeout. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. We'll come back and we'll get some Kyle's clicks weighing in on everything here to close out the show between now and noon. It is Just Dubs with JD John Dickinson on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Just Dubs with John Dickinson now continues, streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
All right, back here on a Saturday, JD, Kyle Haar, Raf Corral, although the studio cam down this morning, trying to work through that. We're talking Anthony Davis, Chris Haynes of Amazon Prime last night on their telecast post-game, mentioning that the Warriors are exploring Anthony Davis as a potential trade partner with the Dallas Mavericks, although the Mavs, as Haynes reported, not really interested in the Warriors roster. Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga would have to be the basis for a deal there. But again, I don't think Dallas would be looking at really having much interest in either of those players. So does a Moses Moody and a Buddy Hield and picks and other things have to go to different places in an attempt to facilitate that type of a deal? Kyle, let's get to some clicks here. Kyle's clicks, YouTube chat just going off here today on this Saturday as we pose the question, would you be interested in Anthony Davis? My initial reaction was no. And then I just start to think about, man, if you could keep him healthy, he's somebody that can score and rebound and block shots, but he's got to want to play the center spot, which he doesn't always want to do. But then again, it's just, what would you be giving up? And you'd be giving up basically Draymond Green, who is the heart and soul, especially in the playoffs. But again, the Warriors find themselves in this position where they got to be good enough to get to the playoffs before they can worry about playoff Draymond and all of that. But I am fascinated that it does seem to be, Kyle, and we'll let you run through a bunch of these here. We'll try to go rapid fire in the final 10 minutes or so. The fact that people are against it, man. Like, people want no part of Anthony Davis, which I actually think is a little bit surprising considering how down people equally seem to be on Draymond Green of late.
Yeah, and I would say just quickly here, I think AD, in the regular season definitely lowers your floor because you don't know how many games he's going to play. But once you get into the playoffs, I think he definitely raises your ceiling. And if you think about in the West, who can match up against AD? It's Wemby, it's Chet, and that might be about
Joker.
it. Jokic. But yeah, that might be about it.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the chat. People are fired up here at 808 KMBR, the call-in number as well, 415-808-5627. But let's get some chats. We'll try to go rapid fire. I'll try to give a quick comment on most of them, but a lot of them I think are of the yes or no variety. To be honest, I hate to say this. I like Draymond Green, but I think it's time to move on. Well, and that's the question too. If you believe, because it relates back to Steve and Draymond getting into it this week. If you believe it's time to move on from Draymond, that he's hitting a wall at this stage of his career where he's going to be 36 coming up in March, to where he's declining to a point that you're not going to get the playoff Draymond anymore, or the best of Draymond moving forward, even enough to make it worthwhile, and you're looking to move on from him, there are only so many players that you can even trade him for that could potentially be of anywhere close to a similar level of impact. And so if you're somebody that thinks it's time to move on from Draymond, like Anthony Davis, to me, this Anthony Davis trade should be appealing. If that, you can't say I don't want Draymond or Draymond's cooked, but I don't want Davis at the same time. Like, there has to be some belief in Draymond at this point. If you look at not wanting to basically make this move. So good comment there. Steve-O 1229. Anybody saying yes to AD is thinking of a healthy AD, not a broken older AD. Fair point. I mean, that you are hoping for the AD that even in December has averaged 21 and 12. But he didn't play but one game in November. So, I mean, that's exactly, I think, where it's at. And he is out of shape, which potentially leads toward maybe, being less available. That's the big concern, is I feel like Davis is basically kind of quit on the whole Dallas situation because of the way everything went down with his arrival and just where this roster sits right now, kind of in flux with them waiting to make a bunch of moves. But yeah, the Warriors have a bunch of guards, and we haven't mentioned guards. We've talked Draymond and JK because I think that would have to be the framework of a deal with the Warriors moving, those guys somewhere in this Davis thing with others. But Dallas has all the 4s and the 5s, and the Warriors have all the guards, basically the combo guards and the 2. So can there be some combination of Dallas gets some guards in a deal, and the Warriors wind up getting some bigs in a deal? I also say, and we talked about this on Christmas, Kyle. Before we get back into more chats here quickly, the Mavs do have players on their roster that, if you take AD out of it and some of the big moves, I'd take Gafford. I'd take PJ Washington's not trade eligible till the offseason. I would take PJ Washington in the summer. I'd take Najee Marshall. I'd take Max Christie. I'd take, they got a lot of guys. I'd take Brandon Williams. Like they've got a lot of guys that I'd potentially want on the team here. All right, let's move forward. I knew about Brock first. Is this Greg Papa? I knew about, or is this Larry Kruger's burner? We're going nowhere is currently constructed. I would be willing to give AD a shot. I think that's one fair way to look at it. Like if you believe this team can't win a title or even get to the second round of the playoffs with what they have now, then you have to be more open toward exploring some different options. So I think, again, it's not as clear cut as no, Davis stinks and he's old and he's heavy and you can't say Draymond's washed and Davis is out of shape and old and broken. And then, you got to at least look to try to explore it. All right, move forward here. JMU 22, they should win the next 3 easy. I don't know about easy. Nothing's easy. Which would be 6 in a row. Losing any of those games makes them a scrub team. You can lose the Toronto game. I'm going to give you the Toronto game, and I've said this a couple times. You can lose the Toronto game, and I'm going to give you some grace. You cannot lose the Brooklyn or the Charlotte game, and if you win the Toronto game, you need to win all 3, because I'm giving you no grace if you wind up 2-1, but you win the Toronto game and you lose the Charlotte game or the Brooklyn game. You're either going 2-1 and your loss is tomorrow at Toronto, or you're going 3-0 because you beat Toronto and you got to beat the other 2. That's simply put how I'm rolling with this thing. Florida Dubs fan, let's see if the Dubs can stop the latest Duke rookie. No, not Cooper, but Kneppel. Yeah, let's see if the Warriors can keep him from scoring 30 when they play Charlotte. My money's on Kneppel. Well, that'll be a New Year's Eve something to watch. And of course, we'll be talking about it on Dubs OT on the stream. But yeah, the randos and young players have definitely had their way with the Warriors at different times this season. All right, let's Stoney 735. If I see a starting lineup after New Year's of Steph, Melton, Jimmy, Green, Davis, the Warriors will win the championship. I don't care what fans say about Davis. Give Steph an all-star big. It's over. Here's the problem, though. You can't get Davis without giving up Draymond. Or Jimmy. Because, Jimmy right now makes the exact same amount of money as Davis. And it sounds, the other tell here in what Chris Haynes reported is that the Warriors are exploring the Draymond angle and not the Jimmy angle. Like they would want Steph, Jimmy, and Anthony Davis to be the foundation point of where they would look to go. So you got to pick one or the other, Stoney. So get back to us. Are you willing to do it if you're giving up Draymond and others, including Jonathan Kuminga, which again, at this point, that's addition by subtraction. He's going to wind up going somewhere. We're not going to play the clip, by the way, but that was the other point that was made by Chris Haynes last night. He said, hey, league executives on other teams believe, hey, it's a wrap. Like Kuminga's going somewhere in the 3-week window, January 15 to February 5th. Like you can book it. Don't know where, but everybody across the league thinks basically Kuminga's the guy who's most likely to be moved of any player in the NBA. So stay tuned, as they say. Khan got an ankle sprain. They will probably miss him. All right, so we'll keep tabs on that. I'm not going to lie, I haven't really followed Charlotte that extensively. They were on last night. I thought he was playing last night, actually, but I might be wrong. I thought I saw him out there. I was kind of scanning around watching some games, but he must have got, he went out in that game, only played 15 minutes, but I saw him hit a couple of threes against Orlando last night. So yeah, we'll see if he's able to play on Wednesday. 1 or 2 3-and-D wings, and we would be a lock for the playoffs not playing. I agree. To me, it's more about the 3-and-D wings. Can you use Kuminga and Moody, maybe Pajemski picks to get that type of a player? I think that's more where you really want to look at it. But again, I think the Warriors are going to flesh everything out. I do find it interesting that Michael Porter Jr.'s name's come up with Brooklyn. He's obviously a shooting wing, kind of a Klay Thompson-ish shooter in a four's body, in a 3-4 man's body.
Yeah, but he's 6'10".
But he's 6'10". And so, would there be a scenario where you would look to bring and this would have to include Draymond also, but would you look to bring Claxton and Porter Jr. back, for Draymond and Kuminga and a bunch of other stuff and potentially picks? Like, the Warriors are at a point where regardless of 3 in a row, or if they make it 6 in a row, or if they wind up making it a 10-3 type of a stretch, they still have to look to make some moves here between now and then. Good Draymond. AD only has to be poked in the eye and he's gone for weeks. That's true. There is an Anthony Davis injury scare every single night. Anthony Davis is on the floor. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 FM and 680 AM San Francisco, the sports leader. It's just Dubs here as we go a little overtime on a Saturday here. We're going to get out, Kyle, in about 3 minutes, if that's good. If you need to dip, feel free, but I promise you we'll go. We'll go about 3 minutes.
I'm hanging.
Kyle's got a family function. He's got to get
the post Christmas meetup with the aunt, uncle, and cousin function.
Yeah, he's like, I got to get to this function, so let's not go too far over today if we can, JD, but you know how I roll. Crew goes a few minutes over, and then I like to go a few minutes over. So it's just the way we roll. Ahi Tuna, even an overweight AD would help us, not going to lie. It's intriguing. He's got to be in shape though for me. And they would obviously have to get him in shape. Get him with Rick Celebrini and get him in shape. But even that, like, is he going to need a month to get his conditioning right before he can help this team? Like that that would make the whole thing a no for me, just on that front. Let's see here. Let's do a few more. JK makes 22.5. Davis makes 54. You need an extra 30 mil. Well, 25 of that would be Draymond in this construct. And then you'd have to include other stuff. But again, as Chris Haynes reported, and we played the audio, Dallas ain't really interested in Kuminga and Draymond. So those two may, for salary purposes, have to go somewhere, but it's going to have to be 3, 4, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6. I go LeBron here. Teams involved in a potential trade. That's why estimated eyes. You think Celebrini wants AD? Great question. And I think Mike Dunleavy and everybody in the Warriors front office would have to analyze that. I think there's no question that would have to be broken down. Diggum, I actually think Dre is okay as long as you lower his minutes moving towards the playoffs. Yeah, that was a point that we got into on Christmas night. I mean, you could put Draymond almost in the bucket of players where if he doesn't have it on a given night, then just go with other guys. And, maybe you go with a little more TJD. Maybe you go with a little more Quentin Post. Maybe go with a little more Horford and kind of spread it out with those guys and just give 20 minutes if Draymond not hitting shots and turning the ball over, just take him out of the game and try to win with your offense, which is something the Warriors really haven't been able to do a ton here. All right, final minute, rapid fire. Most dynasties in sports, LM writes, in sports history have ended from the last title, which means the Warriors dynasty was 2015 to 18. 22 don't count. I think 22 would count. I think 4 and 8 would count. Whatever it was, 3 and 4, 3 and 4 with the 73 plus the 4 and 8. 22 would count because it was still Steph, Draymond, and Klay with Steve Kerr. So that would definitely count, even though the cast of characters around them was a little bit different. All right, let's get 2 more. 2 more to wrap it up here.
Oh, I do want, if we do have a gist, I know we don't have like a billboard, but this would be, I think, our Just Dubs like comment of the day. It is pretty funny.
Hey, AD. Oh, wait, we have post. We have post. We don't need AD. We have post at home. Hey, AD, we good. We have post. We got post at home. I saw Vucevic had a big block. Vucevic had a big block last night for Chicago late. They were playing Philly, and I like, that looked like Quentin Post. That looked like a play Quentin Post would make. You got Vuce at home, and Quentin Post.
Man, Quentin Post has really leveled up his game, going from we have Vucevic at home to we have AD at home.
He just can't hit a three. He just can't hit any threes anymore. He's like a good defender now, but he can't hit threes.
Yeah,
it's like you can't. Well, you can't have everything.
The post side now.
You can't have everything in this world. All right, that's going to do it. Big thanks to Raf Corral. His Bears taking on the Niners. Of course, here on the Sports Leader tomorrow. And Kyle's going to be a part of that broadcast. I'll be a part of the broadcast as well tomorrow. So no Dubs OT tomorrow after the Warriors and the Toronto Raptors, but we are going to be back Monday. We'll do kind of a 2-for Monday night after the Warriors take on Brooklyn, 7 to 9 here on the Sports Leader, and then back with Just Dubs next Saturday here between 11 and 12. So for Kyle and Raf, I'm JD. We'll talk to you then right here on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader.